Hello and welcome, my dear fellow shining being, from all the spaces and all the multifold dimensions and all times spent. I am Sylvia Hartmann, the creator of Modern Energy, and today we're going to talk about my quote, "No victims here, only heroes." Since I first posted that quote, I got quite a bit of pushback, as you can imagine, as it is hugely fashionable at this time to be a victim and to gain attention and status and privilege from being a victim. And here's the thing, when you are doing mathematics, it's not good enough to just say, this is so, this is the answer, this is the correct thing. You have to show how you got there, step by step. And I would like to do that today, to do the modern energy version of this discovery process of how I got to the place where I would stand up and say, there are no victims here, only heroes. So, yeah, let us begin. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to tell you about my star events that taught me certain things along the way. And this is how then eventually I came to that conclusion that there are no victims here, only heroes. So, shall we begin? And the story really does begin at a party. In 1993, there's a young aspect of mine at this party, and she's having a good time. And she's wandering into this room. And in the room, there are two young people, sort of in their early 20s, and they're having an argument. And as I'm standing there listening to them arguing, it's a crazy argument. One of them is saying, "Ha! You were never beaten until your skin broke." And the other one was responding with, "Oh, but you never had your back pressed up against the glowing hot radiator." And then the other one went back with, "Ha ha, but you have never been by your father." And I'm like, what the hell are you doing? What is going on here? Are you having some kind of a competition? Can I join? What's the prize? And the young man laughed and said, "It's don't join in. This is a shit game, and the prize is a jar with a turd in it." And then we all started to laugh, and yeah, that was that. That was that moment when I walked in and I saw this victim competition for the first time in 1993. And a little while later, at this time, I was still working as an animal behaviorist. And I had this problem dog came in with a couple, and this couple consisted of a retired lady and her mother. And at some point during this, we're talking about the problems of the dog that they had. And at some point, the two of them burst out into that same victim competition. "Ah, but you don't know what it's like to live with arthritis." And the other one responded with, "Oh, but you don't know what it's like to have cancer." And I was like, whoa, that's the same victim competition. They're having a victim competition between them. And it was really remarkable. And it's really something, once you see a pattern, you can see it over and over again. And it is true that I was sitting there not trying to laugh because that image of a pickle jar with a turd in it was like literally floating in midair as I was listening to their victim competition. It's fascinating. It's no wonder that the dog was having behavior problems, really, if you think about it. These two were very competitive amongst each other. Interesting thing, just an interesting thing. And just didn't think much about it. I just found it interesting to find that victim competition there again, so clearly played out in front of me on my sofa. And yeah, so that was that. And then I came to the conclusion there's nothing wrong with the dogs. It's clearly the owners. And if I want to, make a change in the world, make the world a better place for all the animals, then the leverage point for that would have to be people. So between 1993 and 1998, I switched my training from an animal behavior specialist into a people behavior specialist, if you want to call it that. Luckily, I avoided psychology. This is an honest fact, as I was wondering what to do, what my next steps would be towards helping people with their problems. I got a hold of a book that had the basics of modern psychology in it, organized by the people who had created this. And my aspect read that and went, what the hell? What the hell are you doing, people? I want nothing to do with that. That's just ridiculous. I want to learn something else. So my aspects went to NLP and hypnotherapy, and eventually discovered the tapping therapies, EFT, in 1998, and thought that was a brilliant idea to try and get more people into understanding that we really have a living energy body. That was the path that we went down. So from 1996 onwards, I started to see hypnotherapy clients, and that switched to tapping clients in 1998. And at some point, there was this gentleman, client of mine, who turned up and he said, I just can't take this anymore. I'm in psychotherapy, but my psychotherapist just won't listen to me. They just will not listen to me. He doesn't understand. He just won't allow me to tell him that I know it's my fault that my daughter died because I bought her the car for her 18th birthday present. And he will not, my psychotherapist will not accept that this is my fault. Clearly, this is my fault. I know it's my fault. If I hadn't bought her that bloody car, then she'd still be alive today. And the psychotherapist says that unless he would accept that it wasn't his fault, that he's completely blameless, no therapy could ever succeed, and he would have to suffer with his symptoms forever, which included nightmares and all sorts of things. And I was quite amazed by that a psychotherapist wouldn't listen to their client. I came from the animal behavior, where you don't talk a lot, you just watch and see and listen, and you really try to understand what the creature is trying to tell you. You don't presume they're lying to you. You don't presume that an animal with a behavior problem is just lying or doing it to wind you up, or you're trying to change their mind or something. You just pay attention and you take what's given to you as what's really there, So I, not being a psychologist and, working with energy, I was like saying, so this deep sense of guilt that you feel, this overwhelming sense of guilt that you feel, that is your lived experience, as we would now say many years later. We didn't even have that term back then. So that's the truth for you, isn't it? And he's like, yes, it's the truth for me. It's true. I bought her the car. The car killed her, for the love of God. This is my fault. And so I said, okay, let's work with that then. Where do you feel that in your body? Show me with your hands. Where do you feel this overwhelming sense of guilt? And we worked on it. And at the end of this, he felt much better. And he said, the most important thing for me was that you listened to me, that you didn't try and talk me out of the way I've been feeling all these years. Thank you so much. And that was a big moment to man, this was his experience. This was his life. This is how he felt. How can you tell a person that he's wrong about that? It's crazy. A little while later, and now we come to the next step in my calculation, there was a young man And he had the same problem. He had the exact same problem that my other person had. And he'd been seeing various counselors and therapists over a long period of time. And because I was by now keyed into this thing, is that now, how do you really feel? How do you really feel about this? What is your side of the story? And he told me that the same thing, that he just could not accept that he was just a hapless victim, a hapless, helpless victim, because he remembered clearly as a young boy standing outside that teacher's room, and everybody knew what was going on. Everybody knew what was happening, and he'd been chosen as one of those to whom this would be happening. And he's standing outside the room and thinking about it, and then making the decision to go into the room because he wanted the extra attention and the ice cream. And this young man said to me, I just can't accept that none of this is my fault, that I'm just this victim in this thing. I made a decision. And I know they're telling me that as a young child, he was about 9, 10, you can't make such decisions legally and everything. And you have absolutely no agency. But that's not how I felt. This is not how I felt. And I can't accept this. I can't accept it. And I was like, yeah, I've met that one before. I have met that before, that somebody just doesn't want to identify as a victim. That they want to keep their agency. Because if they're just a victim, then this young man said that, how am I supposed to go forward in life if I'm just a victim? I can't handle that. That's not who I am. That's not who I feel who I am. And I'm like, yeah, okay, you're not a victim. Let's go from that thing. So you've made a bad decision when you were very young. Let's look at that instead. And that was such a huge breakthrough. He was like, yeah, I made a bad decision. It wasn't a good decision. I didn't know what I was deciding. I only really understood the bit with the ice cream and the extra attention and getting better marks from this teacher. Didn't understand the other side of the story. And it was brilliant. It was just logical. It was good. It helped this person tremendously. And what also helped them was that they didn't have to battle about this victim business anymore. They didn't have to try and defend what they really felt and experienced at the time anymore. Which was just crazy that anybody would put somebody who's already a victim or a person who's been severely injured through that. Anyway, so that was the next one in that progression that was unfolding there. I was studying many, many other things at the time, doing all sorts of other things. And there's always these sort of lines or star memories that connect these. There's always these star events with these people where my insights and my learning comes from. That's the pieces of the calculations that I make and that I'm sharing with you today. So now we're in the time when we're doing tapping therapies. And tapping therapies are super interesting, doing proper energy work at last. But we're still hampered with the fact that everything is trauma. Everything is trauma. Everybody, the only reason why your life's not working is trauma, 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 trauma. And the idea that if we find the right trauma and somehow release it, and at least with tapping, we have a way of actually releasing it. We tap on these meridian points and there's this, and then all of a sudden, oh, yeah, yes, I can think clearly again. I'm not crying anymore. I'm not having the nightmares anymore. Whoa, this is brilliant. And it was brilliant. And I had absolute tons of tapping clients and learned such a lot about the cause and effect of behavior and trauma and what have you. And there were these interesting cases where the tapping on the trauma just wasn't working. It just wasn't, it did nothing, not a thing. Could tap for half an hour on the trauma and then ask the client, how do you feel? And they'd be like, it's exactly the same as it was before. And you know that before you even ask the client, because you've been sitting in the room with them and you've been tapping with them, and you know there wasn't that shift moment. It didn't happen. And so I started then asking, why is that with some clients, not all of them, some. Why is that with some trauma clients, absolutely nothing happens? Why is that? And I think that on this particular day, something linked up in my mind. This lady had a lot of psychological problems, energy problems, problems in her life. And this is understandable, because when she was a young teenager, 16 years old, one night she's walking home from a late thing at a school library, and this car with these 4 boys draws up by the side of the road next to her. And the boys are saying, oh, do you want to come for a party? And she knows these boys, they have a bad reputation, and she feels that she shouldn't get in the car. But they keep winding her up and saying that they're going to make fun of her the next day at school, putting on social pressure. And so the girl gets in the car and finds herself some hours later left for dead in the wilderness, which is obviously, that's a life event, isn't it? And this lady had been tapping on the actual trauma, step by step, of this, what happened in the car and then out of the car in the wilderness, and what happened afterwards for a long time and with a lot of people at this point. And this agency thing flashed into my mind. The boy who had been standing outside the door with that teacher and made that decision to open the door and go in. And I got tingles with that lady. I mean, real tingles. And I said, have you ever tapped on that decision that your aspect made that day to get in the car? Have you ever tapped on that? And she was like, no, that was before the trauma. And I said, yeah. But your aspect did make the decision to get in the car, right? And she knew it was the wrong thing to do, right? And she was like, yeah. Oh, God, yeah. The minute that car drew up beside me, I had such a strong feeling of dread. And I just wanted to run away, but I didn't. And I'm like, wow. And this is now, the atmosphere in the room is electric. There's tingles. I can see she's woken up. She's sparkling. I am tingling all over. And I'm saying, oh, my God. I think that this decision point, that is what's blocking all the tapping on all the trauma that followed after the decision point. And so we did that. We tapped on that. And it was remarkably similar to that young gentleman with the teacher, is when she's, God, yeah, this is, I made that decision. Yeah, I did. I did make that. It really was my fault. I shouldn't have gotten in the car. I should not have gotten in the car. I had such a strong gut response and I overrode it because I wanted to be popular. Oh my God. And I'm like, okay, so you were young and you made a bad decision. You made a bad decision. Now that we can deal with, that we can handle, that we can forgive. And even in the day back before working directly with the positives, we totally got that to the point where she would be able to, she was there with the aspect and forgave the aspect, as it were. It wasn't forgiveness, it was something else. It was just understanding and love and all the circumstances. And yeah, this led directly then not only to the recession of symptoms for this lady, but also then, interestingly enough, the high spots in the trauma, now they were actually getting movement in them, when she was doing further tapping. And that was amazing. So obviously, I was very excited by this. And I started really looking out for this, and I published articles on this to let all the other people who were working with EFT, classic negative EFT back then, let them know that if they're not moving this, look at that decision point. And that was super fascinating. And I came across a few more of those, and other people who were working with this came across that too. And so, yeah, that's a thing. It's a real thing, that decision point. One of the last EFT or tapping clients I saw was somebody who got into a terrible car accident, and also, again, this energy system was blocked up, wouldn't move with the tapping. We went back to, was there a moment at all when you knew you shouldn't have driven down that road or gotten something like that? And she says, oh, yes, totally. I remember this clearly. Sitting at the traffic light in the car thinking, I shouldn't be here. What am I doing? Why am I even here? Why am I even going where I'm supposed to be going today in such a hurry? I really should go home. I should turn around and go home. I did think that at the traffic light. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. How many times does that happen out there and we don't even know about it? I just remembered something else there. At that time, somebody posted, if you could give your past person, your past self, one piece of good advice, what would it be? And I immediately typed in, trust your gut. Please trust your gut. If you don't, terrible things might happen. Like the lady at the traffic lights, if she had actually not gone, oh, I'm just being crazy because I have such a negative feeling about the situation. I'm just crazy. She hadn't done that. And to be fair, she's been trained all her life to think that way, that our emotions are just crazy. They don't mean anything. They're just crazy. No, they're not. They're not crazy. If she'd just turned around and gone home, her entire timeline would have been different. And even, let's imagine for a moment, somebody has this feeling and there isn't an accident in the future. I mean, what would she have lost? Nothing at all. She was just getting in the car to do some crazy thing, going to the mall or the cinema, which was completely irrelevant whether she'd gone there or not. And yet here she is in a wheelchair, and her life has changed irrevocably because she didn't listen to her gut. So if you take one message away from this whole story, please let it be that trust your gut. Please trust your gut. It could be so bad if you don't. So yeah, so this thing was building up, that how important agency is. That this thing of that, even though you were like 4 years old, you were thinking things, you were making decisions, and you were having emotions. And I know that according to our ideas that we have at the moment, you were just a stupid creature, or meaningless creature, or just a hapless victim, or whatever this idea is. You remember because you were there and you made the decision. And I think that should be totally acknowledged, and we can learn from that. Don't make bad decisions. Trust your gut. Your decisions are important, and you are in a position to make them. You are in a position to make a decision that can take your timeline that way, that way, that way, that way. And yeah, sometimes we make decisions that have terrible, terrible repercussions. But hating ourselves for those, or hating our past aspects for making these terrible decisions, is not going to get us anywhere either if we want to have a better, happier future. That where we're not thrown around as this hapless victim like a cork on a raging river that has absolutely no agency, that has no say in their own lives. That's crazy. That's crazy. That causes mental illness. And it does. So far, we're so far. Then there was, for me, the case that was literally the final nail in the hapless victim narrative. And thank God that wasn't one of my cases either. It's just one that made the rounds at the time. So this was a classic story. This was a young gentleman who had been groomed by the neighborhood pedophile over a long period of time. Didn't have a dad, didn't have a functioning family. It was like a little stray dog in the neighborhood there. And the groomer took him in. And like our young man who was standing outside the door of the teacher made that decision, well, here we come to something that's a little bit different. This young man was starting to soften up finally, to start to accept that he was just a victim and none of this was his fault and he had no agency whatsoever. And this groomer had just taken him over completely like some alien mind snatcher. And his final frontier thing was to tell the therapist of the best moment in his entire life, which was when he was on the top deck of an open tourist bus at night in the summer, driving over a bridge over a huge river that was filled with colorful reflections, the city lying out before them. The night wind was a little cold, and the groomer put his arm around the young boy to keep him warm. And that was the most beautiful experience of that person's life. And he told the therapist. And the therapist said, "You were just deluded." The young man bowed his head. He left the therapist's office, never even went home. Went straight to the motorway bridge, that bridge over the river, and killed himself. Man. There's literally nothing to be gained by telling a person that they're nothing than some stupid sack that any evil person can do anything with they want. Soul destroying. It's bloody soul destroying. Don't do it. It's horrendous. God bless that young man. Hopefully, his story at the time really made therapists start to think a little bit more about what they were doing. And hopefully some of them were questioning this endless victim narrative. And I certainly have him in my book of stars as one of those moments where I really understood how important this is. How important this is not to brainwash people who don't feel like victims into victimhood. Force them, berate them until they crack and break. Yeah, that was the nail in the coffin for victimhood for me. And yeah, so the next star event on my line to get from victim to hero. So I knew that victimhood was terrible. Agency was of the essence. but I wasn't there with the hero part yet. Okay, so you're not a victim. You do have agency, and you are a person that made a mistake, whichever age you were at. We can make mistakes at any age, and that's a fact. There's one piece missing here. How we got from the victim to the hero. This was a lady in her mid-50s who had just been offered the job of CEO of a massive company, 20,000 people working there. And she was overwhelmed with a something, and that's why she came to see me. She said that because of her history of original child abuse and so on, she felt that she couldn't be the leader of this company because she was damaged goods. And I literally don't know what happened with me when I heard those words, damaged goods. I looked at this woman sitting in front of me, half a century old, so successful in life, mother of 3 children, God damn it, and a woman who'd been asked to be CEO of a company. And that's back in the day before, they had to have their quotas done. And she's sitting here in front of me and she tells me she's damaged goods. And that's possibly the first time I ever had the experience of another person's life flashing before my eyes. And I was just absolutely astonished that she could say such a thing. Absolutely astonished. Wow. What heroism. Obviously, the abuse she suffered as a child and the neglect and all the rest of it, caused her to have to work 5 times as hard as a normal person in order to achieve the same outcomes that the normal people just take for granted. Things like getting up in the morning and brushing your teeth, or leaving your house in a straight line and just getting into your car. These things are terribly difficult for people who've been through difficult childhoods. They have to really work at it. Every little thing that they do, they have to work at. So much harder than, people who haven't gone through it would ever know. But, oh my God, how much extra work and effort had gone into that to bring her to a position where a bunch of people have that much faith and trust in her that they would make her the CEO of this big company. Oh my God. And I told her that. I told her what I had seen. I told her that she's a hero, not a victim, not damaged goods, not a survivor, but an actual real hero. And that as a leader with her life experiences and really understanding what people are like and how they work, how lucky was the company to have her instead of some person who'd never been out, been to private schools and always been fed with a gilded spoon and whatever. They were so lucky to have her as their leader. And it was awesome. This lady just beamed. I mean, she was just literally just like, I've never thought of it like that. But how right you are. Oh my God, I'm a hero. Yes, you are. Of course. Of course you are. Of course you're a hero. God damn it. Man. And that's that lady, that star event, that was when it shifted then from the victim narrative, which had been put aside. Now we know what we need to be to make it in life, what we need to understand about ourselves to make it through life. Now, I'm not a rich CEO leader of a giant company. We have the Guild of Energists, perhaps 10,000 people in the world. But yeah, you might even be just sitting in your house and you can't pay the bills. Look, this is something that I said to someone who I tried to explain this to, because they weren't terribly successful. They weren't successful at all. They were just getting social security payments and getting by from day to day without trying to kill themselves. And I said to that person, look, after all you've been through, after all that you've done to yourself, after all that other people have done to you, and after all those things that other people haven't done to you, you are still here, and you still know how to love. And I'm sorry if that isn't a hero, that I don't know what is. And so that is, step by step, how I came to the quote, there are no victims here, only heroes. No victims here, only heroes. This is my lived experience. This is how my calculations have gone from one thing to another. And I strongly, strongly feel that this is the right way forward for individual people who have suffered from hardship and trauma. Beyond that, to our communities, to our families, and so on and so forth, spreading out into the great wide world. I think this is a super important message. I think more people need to be told about this. And to be fair, this is so controversial and so completely against the tide of the mainstream, which is like lemmings falling off the stress cliff to their deaths. Oh, it's terrible for me to watch this. Every single thing, the victim competition, the race to the greatest victimhood, which ends up with that young man's wonderful jar with a turd in it as the prize. What a prize to take home. Or do you want to be a hero? Do you want to be loved and to love? I know which one has the better future timeline. And yeah, so we came to this thing to say that, I mean, this is a very controversial thing. How could I ever prove this? How could I ever prove this? And hallelujah, starmatrix proves it. Starmatrix proves it because it focuses on your best experiences in life, on your star powers, the moments when you actually did something absolutely amazing, like a superpower. And it's not silly things like shooting lasers out of your hand. It may be helping somebody feel different, or could be anything really. Running really fast on one occasion. Every person in their star memories are these, wow, yes, I did that. I did that. I was there. That evidence, that lived experience is sitting inside every person's star memories. And we need to activate that. For 150 years, all we've done is dig in trauma. This is a court case where half of the evidence has always been missing. That is unjust, it's unfair, and it's driving people crazy. So this is, starmatrix is the solution to this. And as soon as you start really paying attention to your own star memories, best moments of your life, you will find that dots connect and you really do have a better understanding of who you are. And let me tell you this based on my life's experience, based on my lived experience, is that human beings are not victims. They are heroes if only they knew it. And if we get more people to think that way, because as a hero, you see, as a hero, you're no longer me, 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 me. As a hero, you walk through life in a different way. You see somebody struggling in the street with a heavy bag and you go to help them. It's a natural thing to do for a hero. You know, you try to be the best you can for your family, for your friends, for your society. You try to do good things, not hate and destroy, and you're not constantly angry. Heroes haven't time for that. You're not constantly doing all these things because heroes have missions. They have purpose in life. Different purposes for every one of us. But it comes with the territory of being a hero, that you have a purpose, you have a mission, you have a reason to get up in the morning. And I think that is super, super important, that we reclaim that we get back to that. Well, thank you for listening to that whole thing, to my trail of stars that led me from no victims, agency, to why I believe now that heroes, we are heroes. We have a right to be heroes, and we can find the evidence for that in our own star memories. And with that, I rest my case, as they say, for putting an end to victimhood. Thank you so much for being here. If you think that what I'm saying makes sense and it is useful in terms of helping other people come to new conclusions, to have better mental health, to have better, more loving understanding of themselves and the world around them, please share. Use the hashtag starmatrix. Send people to starmatrix.org, which has the basics on it and explains what Star Matrix is and how to start a book of stars. It's a wonderful, natural, and hugely healing and uplifting way to not just get the here and now under control, but to plot a better path into the future for each one of us individual and for all of us together. Yeah, and then I would leave us once more with the quote. There are no victims here, only heroes. Thank you so much for listening. Did what I just say make sense to you? Please let me know in the comments. I really do want to hear what you think and feel about the idea that there are no victims here, only heroes. And I highly, highly invite you to go and check out starmatrix.org and start your journey into a better future. Bye for now.